Elijah had never expected much out of life. Born with a heart that beat like glass under pressure, he lived in quiet surrender, his body a countdown, his future predetermined. His family, the Wexlers, were powerful, revered, and desperate to save their only son. They had arranged a ritual engagement for him at 13, something about fate alignment and life extension. He hadn't questioned it, he didn't have the strength to. Harper was the girl chosen for him, pretty, polished, chosen not out of love but compatibility. She never once pretended to care beyond what was required, and Elijah, in turn, never pretended to mind. They went to the same school, sat beside each other at formal events, exchanged stiff glances in hospital rooms. She smiled like a porcelain doll, always flawless, always hollow, and he was used to that. Until today. The video came from an anonymous number, just 12 seconds, Harper, laughing, clutching Mason's hoodie as she leaned into his chest by the lockers. The kiss wasn't timid, it was all tongue and hunger, sloppy and fearless, like a girl who had nothing to lose. Elijah watched it once, then again, and once more, not because he couldn't believe it, but because he could. The third time, he muted the sound and focused on her eyes. They were closed, relaxed, happy, a kind of happiness she had never once offered him in 10 years. He didn't say a word, didn't call her, didn't scream. Instead, he turned off his phone, walked down the long marbled corridor of the Wexler estate, and found her. Not Harper. The maid. She was crouched in the hallway outside the library, carefully scrubbing a spot on the floor with a rag. Her dark hair was braided to the side, her clothes plain and patched, her shoes worn to the stitching. A blue woven bag leaned against the wall behind her. She looked up the moment she sensed him, wide eyes, tense posture, still kneel. Elijah stared at her for a long moment. "What's your name?" She blinked. "Anna Claire." He nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. Then he turned toward the butler who had silently stepped into the hall. "Let her stay, move her into the house." The butler froze. "Sir, into the main residence?" "Into the marital wing," Elijah said coldly, his voice a soft strike of thunder. "Throw out everything that belonged to Harper." Silence. The maid's hands trembled slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "Elijah," the butler began. "Tonight," he said. Then he walked away. In his chest, his heart pounded once, hard and uncertain. Not from exertion, not from illness, but from something else, something sharp, something like clarity. Elijah Wexler had entered the world with a heart doctors labeled unreliable, congenital, they said, structural failure, irregular rhythms. As a baby, he was hooked to machines before he ever saw daylight. As a boy, he memorized the ceilings of hospitals more vividly than any constellation, and as a teenager, he made peace with the quiet truth that he wouldn't live to see middle age. His parents, Madison and Grant Wexler, were titans of pharmaceutical innovation, founders of WexTech, a biomedical empire built on the very idea that no illness should be stronger than science. But no matter how many clinical trials they funded, no matter how many specialists they flew in from overseas, nothing changed Elijah's diagnosis. The heart was fragile, and so, slowly, their hope migrated away from medicine, toward myth. When Elijah was 13, they brought home a girl, Harper Ellison. She was quiet, poised and beautiful in a way that pleased magazine covers. Her family, though not as rich as the Wexlers, was socially prominent. But more importantly, Harper's birth hour aligned with Elijah's. Destiny compatibility, the master had called it. Her chart, they said, balanced his. Her presence would calm the tides of death. So they arranged a symbolic engagement, just enough tradition to satisfy the old beliefs, just enough distance to maintain modern decorum. The two of them shared classes, car rides, and stiff, mandatory holidays. Harper was never unkind. But she was never kind either. She offered him presence, not comfort, duty, not warmth. And Elijah never asked for more. His entire life had been lived on borrowed time, and borrowed things don't inspire demands. He accepted her the way he accepted his injections, necessary, clinical, routine. Until the video. The betrayal didn't hurt. Not in the traditional sense, it was more like stepping out into cold wind and realizing you were her. Ear already numb, he didn't feel devastation, he felt efficiency. A cut, clean and exact, and that's why, when Anna Claire arrived, Elijah didn't blink. She came in the late afternoon, The light outside was pale, a storm was on the edge of the horizon. The butler announced her at the door, voice low and reverent. "Young master, this is Anna Clare. She was brought by Mr. Wexler Sr., a ritual replacement. Her destiny reading aligns even more precisely than Miss Ellison's." Elijah didn't rise from the velvet chaise, he simply looked. She stood at the threshold of marble floors and mirrored walls, holding a sagging blue woven duffel in both hands. Her skin was sun-warmed, her black hair braided simply over one shoulder. A white cotton sundress clung to her slender frame, no makeup, no jewelry, her shoes were canvas, faded and scrubbed nearly white. She bowed her head slightly, speaking to one of the maids. Only after confirming she wouldn't dirty the floor did she step forward and untie her shoes at the door. "She's from St. Amara's village," the butler added. "The Clearwater region, barely 18. Her school transfer has already been filed. She'll attend Preston High, beginning tomorrow." Elijah's gaze lingered on her a moment longer, then he turned back to the window. He remembered St. Amara vaguely, from Foundation reports. His mother had launched a charity program there years ago, sponsoring girls' education. He didn't ask questions then, he had no energy for details, only signatures. Now one of those details stood in his house. Later, Elijah overheard her being shown to the maid's room. He said nothing at first, then, when he saw the way she walked, back straight despite her nerves, hands folded calmly in front of her body, he spoke. "She'll stay in the room next to mine." The butler froze mid-step. "Sir, eliminate Harper's things, that room is open now. She only brought a single bag, perhaps we should wait until." "I said what I said." Anna Clare didn't protest. When she entered the new room, she ran her fingers once across the bookshelf, then turned toward the butler and asked if she could bathe. A few minutes later, she emerged with hair wet and skin pink from cold water. No one had told her how to use the central heating system. She wore a second sundress, slightly patched at the hem, but clean. She smelled faintly of soap. Her lips were pale, her fingers still damp. When she knocked gently at Elijah's door, he didn't answer at first. When he did, it was quiet. "Come in." She stepped into the room carefully, not letting her feet squeak on the polished wood. "I just wanted to greet you formally," she said softly. "Benefactor." He frowned. "Don't call me that. But you paid for my sister's surgeries, you built the school I attended, and you took me out of Clearwater. I owe you my life." He turned away from her and muttered, "You were simply bought." She didn't flinch. "Then I am not worth that price." There was no pity in her voice, only awareness, and even so, she smiled. He had seen that smile before, on paper, in a file photograph. It was faint and sweet, the way spring sun barely warms frozen grass, innocent, real. "You don't need to work so hard to please me," he said flatly. "I'm not trying to," she replied. "I just want to learn, and not disappoint the family." He watched her silently. "You don't need to worry about me," she added, standing a little taller. "I won't speak out of turn, I'll follow instructions, I'll study hard, and I'll stay out of your way." But Elijah didn't want her to stay out of the way. He just didn't know that yet. The footage arrived with no sender name, just a flash drive on the marble counter, waiting silently beside Elijah's morning vitamins. He plugged it in out of habit, watched it without blinking. Harper's voice was soft but clear, caught by a nearby camera mic. "Let's keep it quiet, the Wexlers can't find out. But after Elijah's gone, we'll finally be free." Then Mason's arms circled her waist, the angle showed their faces perfectly, the comfort in their embrace, the knowing in their eyes. Elijah didn't say a word, he simply closed the file, ejected the drive, and walked to his study. By the time the butler knocked, he had already sent a message to legal to revoke Harper Ellison's fifth-floor access, and another to his assistant to block her number across all internal lines. That afternoon, he asked the cafeteria manager to update the access list. No Harper. The next morning, he walked into his class at Preston High with Anna Clare walking half a step behind him. Their uniforms were the same, but on her, it looked like borrowed fabric. Her satchel was canvas, hand-stitched, her shoes were scuffed white sneakers. She clutched a paper schedule like it was gold. They walked into the lecture hall together, and as they sat, Elijah in his usual seat by the window, Anna quietly taking the one beside him, the room stilled. A whisper to his left, "Is that a new girl?" Someone to his right. That's not Harper. Did the Wexler family switch girls? Then a mocking giggle behind them. Maybe she's his actual fiancée now. Harper must be pissed. Elijah stared out the window. Not once did he respond. Anna didn't seem to mind. She took out a cloth and quietly began wiping his desk. First the corners, then the center. Then, from her bag, she pulled out a small thermos and a folded napkin. She set it gently on his right side. You usually skip breakfast, she murmured. This is white porridge. I asked the kitchen staff. It's good for your stomach. He didn't answer, but he didn't move it away either. At the end of the period, the butler sent a message. Harper had tried to enter the fifth-floor cafeteria again. Denied, as requested. She had screamed at security and threatened their jobs. Elijah simply typed, "Stand firm." That afternoon, Anna was humming softly to herself as she jogged around the courtyard with a notebook in hand. The gardener later reported she helped water the orchids, arranged a new sitting cushion on Elijah's library chair, and even polished the piano in the music room, though she never asked to play it. When Elijah returned to his room, he found her outside, placing a wider chair near the door. She looked up. "You sit here sometimes. The old chair had weak legs. This one's better." He narrowed his eyes. "Who told you that?" "No one," she said simply. "I watched." He didn't answer, but something in his chest fluttered. The next day, during class, Anna was invited to participate in a language roleplay by the foreign exchange teacher. Her English wasn't fluid, and her Mandarin had a thick mountain accent. When she stood, she looked unsure, eyes darting nervously toward Elijah. That's when Harper entered the room. Late, breathless, wearing her usual gloss and entitlement like a shield. She stopped the moment she saw Anna standing beside Elijah. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curled. "She's your replacement?" she sneered. "Wexler, this girl can't even pronounce partner, and you're parading her around like she belongs?" Anna turned red but didn't flinch. She lowered her head. "Mr. Wexler, did I embarrass you?" He turned toward her slowly, taking in her expression, the anxious bite of her lower lip, the tight grip she had on the paper script in her hand. He shook his head once, then raised his hand. "I'll be her partner," he said. The class murmured. Harper's mouth parted slightly. "You never—" But he ignored her. The teacher, stunned but grateful, nodded enthusiastically. "Great, let's begin." Elijah stepped forward. For once, he didn't feel tired. He spoke clearly, softly simplifying the lines for Anna as they read through the dialogue. She stumbled on a few words but recovered quickly, her voice steady. When it was over, the teacher clapped. Anna bowed politely. Elijah turned back toward his seat. Harper stood frozen in the corner, her expression unreadable. That night, Elijah sat in the cafeteria beside Anna. She had poured his tea, laid out his pill schedule, and quietly eaten her food, grateful for every bite. At one point, she looked up and said with a soft, puzzled smile, "They envy me." He didn't look up from his plate. "For what?" "For sitting here," she whispered. "For being beside you." He paused, then, very softly, he said, "That's not something worth envying." But Anna just smiled again. "Maybe not to you." And that smile, simple, uncalculated, free of obligation, pressed into his thoughts like sunlight against frost. He didn't know it yet. But something inside him had already begun to thaw. He dreamed again. Of rooftops and wind, of white sheets pinned to strings, fluttering like wings, of small paper airplanes gliding across the sky, falling gently to the ground. On one of them, he could read the shaky writing, large and uncertain. "Get well soon, fairy." Elijah blinked awake with that sentence burned behind his eyes. The light of early morning cast thin lines across the room. Somewhere outside, birds were singing. The house, for once, was quiet. Anna Claire's slippers made soft thuds down the hallway. She was always up before anyone else. The maid said she'd already helped peel apples for breakfast, swept the courtyard twice, and watered the orchids again. He didn't understand her. And Elijah hated things he couldn't understand. She studied harder than anyone he'd ever seen. Notes stacked, flashcards handwritten, the English novels she struggled to read, some of them were titles he had read years ago. Now, she tried to discuss them at lunch, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with the wrong vocabulary, but always with sincerity. At dawn, she jogged in the garden, her breath forming small clouds in the air. Later, she brought pastries to the cafeteria, ones she'd helped make herself. Soft milk buns, rice cakes, epiphyllum moon pastries. She set them down beside him each day without explanation. And still, when Harper mocked her in front of the class, when classmates snickered at her accent, Anna only looked at him and asked, "Mr. Wexler, did I embarrass you?" Every time, the answer came faster. No. No, she didn't. He didn't know when it started. This twitch inside his chest. Not physical, emotional. Something like an itch behind the ribs. A small pulse of anger when she was humiliated. A flicker of protectiveness when she smiled too patiently. A hollow chill when she bowed too low. One evening, he found her crouched in front of the library doors, copying Owen notes from the school's reading list. By hand, she had no laptop. "You can use the house computer," he said. Anna looked up, startled. "Oh, I didn't want to trouble anyone." He stared at her for a moment. "You're living in a mansion. You can use the damn keyboard." She laughed lightly, brushing dust off her knees. "Then I'll learn how." Later that night, unable to sleep, Elijah walked past the garden and saw the notebook she'd left open on the patio table. He didn't mean to look, but the wind flipped a page, and he paused. Inside were clean columns, neatly written, Elijah Wexler, observations. Breakfast, skips unless reminded, morning meds, taken 7:35 a.m., prefers peppermint tea over green, books he likes, Steinbeck, Ishiguro, wears gloves in colder months but never scarves, eyes flicker when he's holding back a cough. Looks at the sky during lunch, never finishes desserts. He froze. The book was filled, pages and pages of this, his routine, his reactions, his silences. She had been watching, not out of fear, not for manipulation, but something else, devotion that asked for nothing in return. He picked up the notebook and felt the pages, soft, creased from handling. Some had faint marks, a few had oil pastel smudges in the corner. He recognized them. Years ago, when he was in the hospital long-term, he had donated art supplies to the pediatric ward anonymously. 100 boxes of oil pastels, journals, and snacks. He touched one of the smudges, eyes narrowing. A kite fluttered in his peripheral vision. He turned. Anna was in the courtyard again, holding a half-built frame, bamboo, string, handmade. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. "I thought we could fly it on the weekend," she said. "Just us." He didn't answer. He just looked at her, for a very long time. In class the next day, the drama teacher asked for volunteers for the spring play. Harper immediately raised her hand, then smirked. "Anna, I'm sure you'd love to try, but your accent might ruin the whole thing." The class laughed. Anna didn't shrink. She turned, quietly, to Elijah. "Should I sit down?" He didn't think, didn't hesitate. "I'll partner with her," he said. A hush swept the room. Harper's mouth opened, then closed, her fingers tightened around the edge of her desk. Anna's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Wexler?" He looked forward. "You need a stage partner, don't you?" And that was how Elijah Wexler, cold, observant, medically fragile Elijah, volunteered for a school performance, for the first time in his life, not for extra credit, not for his image, but because someone had quietly memorized what time he took his medicine, and what books he liked, and had asked him if porridge would be okay on mornings. His cough was worse, he didn't know what to call it, but he knew it wasn't numbness, not anymore. The 5th floor of the Preston campus cafeteria had always been an unspoken boundary. Students below whispered about it like a myth: white linen tables, meals tailored by private chefs, glass windows that captured the best angle of the afternoon sun. It was reserved solely for Elijah Wexler and whomever he allowed to sit with him. For years, that had included Harper Ellison, but not today. At precisely 12:13, Harper arrived at the elevator. Her heels clicked across the polished marble as she approached the security checkpoint. Mason trailed behind, smiling in that smug, performative way he always did when someone else was about to fight his battles for him. The guard didn't budge. "I'm sorry, Miss Ellison," he said professionally. "Your access has been revoked." Harper blinked. "You must be confused. I'm Elijah's." "You're not on the list," the guard repeated. "Please use one of the public dining floors." Her smile faltered. She stepped closer. "Do you know who I am?" "I do," the guard said, folding his hands. "And that's why I'm following orders from Mr. Wexler." That name, Mr. Wexler, hit harder than a slap. Behind her, Mason stiffened. "Let's just eat somewhere else," he whispered, tugging her sleeve. "It's not a big deal." But Harper wasn't listening. She pushed past the guard, heels echoing loud against the hall. She slammed open the double doors to the fifth-floor lounge. And froze. Elijah was already seated at his usual table. Anna sat across from him, pouring tea into a delicate porcelain cup. The sunlight hit her profile in soft gold. Harper's voice cracked through the silence. "So this is why," she spat. "You replaced me with her?" All eyes turned. Elijah didn't even look up. He set his spoon down, slow and precise. "You shouldn't be here." "I have every right." "You have nothing," he said calmly. "No engagement, no access, no status here. You're no one to me anymore." Harper's face contorted. "Because of her? That girl? She was a maid, Elijah. She scrubs your windows and smiles like a puppy, and you, what? You chose her?" Anna didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to Elijah and asked, in a tone as quiet as a breeze, "If she's no longer your fiancée, then you won't mind what I do, right?" Elijah blinked. "What?" Before he could process, before a single breath could pass, smack. Anna's hand struck Harper across the face with such force that the entire fifth floor fell into silence. Harper staggered back, clutching her cheek. Gasps erupted, forks dropped. And before Mason could step forward, Anna turned and slapped him too, sharp, fast, clean. He stumbled, nearly falling into a chair behind him. "What the hell?" he started. Anna's voice was cold now. "You mocked him behind his back. You snuck into his house. You disrespected his name." Mason's mouth moved, but no words came. Anna stepped closer to Harper, her tone unshaken. "You whispered to him that you'd be free after Elijah dies. And you kissed him behind the lockers like you'd already buried the person who saved your family." You don't know anything," Harper hissed, recovering, her eyes burning. "I know enough," Anna said. "I know what kind of girl you are." Harper glanced toward Elijah for help. "Are you seriously going to let her do this? I was with you for years." "You were never with me," Elijah replied coolly. "You were beside me. That's different. You can't just erase me. I already have." More gasps, a ripple of stunned laughter from a nearby table. Harper's eyes welled up with rage, and something more fragile, realization that she'd already lost. Anna stood with quiet defiance, chest rising and falling, fists clenched at her sides. She didn't look like a maid now. She looked like a mountain storm, silent, unshaken, dangerous. Elijah stared at her. For the first time, he saw past the aprons and study notes, past the mild tone and gentle hands. This was a girl who'd carried buckets of water barefoot down dirt hills. Who'd learned how to fight the world with clean strength, not noise. And she had just fought for him. He rose from his seat and walked toward Harper. She flinched. He didn't hit her. He didn't raise his voice. He just picked up a glass of water and, slowly, poured it over her head. The silence stretched long. When he was done, he set the glass down and leaned slightly closer. "Are you clear-headed now?" Harper's lip trembled. I was angry. Elijah, Elijah is dead to you," he said. "Try Mr. Wexler." Anna stepped beside him. "She won't come back, right?" "No," Elijah said. "Not ever again." Harper backed away, mascara running, stunned. Mason, cowardly as ever, grabbed her elbow and tried to usher her out of the room. She shook him off once, but the second time, she let him. The doors closed behind them, and the room exploded in whispers. Anna looked up at Elijah, breath still short. He turned to her, voice low. "You didn't ask for permission before that slap." Her lips twitched. "Are you mad?" "No," he said, after a pause. "Just surprised." "I wasn't always this polite," she said quietly. "Where I'm from, kindness is a choice, not a guarantee." He stared at her a moment longer, then did something that surprised even himself. He smiled, just a little, and said, "I'll remember that." It was just after noon when the noise began at the front gates. Elijah had been sitting in the courtyard with a book open on his lap, though his eyes hadn't moved past the same sentence in nearly 10 minutes. The sun filtered softly through the trees, casting golden patches across the stone floor. Anna sat nearby, organizing her school notes, occasionally glancing up just to make sure he was still there. The sound of shoes on gravel, chaotic, hurried, broke the quiet. Then came the voice. "George, George, please." "Harper." He didn't move. When the butler approached, face pulled tight with distaste, Elijah merely said, "Let them kneel if they want." And they did. The entire Ellison family had come, though it was Harper who fell to her knees first, scraping her palms across the ground as if each foot closer might undo the distance she'd created. Her mother, in her polished shoes and pearls, stood behind her, trying and failing to look dignified. Her father stayed 2 paces away from the gate, arms crossed, jaw clenched, watching the boy who used to be their golden goose now looking at them like he was staring through glass. Harper crawled the last few steps. Her voice was hoarse. "I was wrong, I was foolish. Please, just let me apologize, let me explain. Elijah, George, I wasn't thinking." Still, Elijah didn't speak. Anna stood quietly beside him. She didn't flinch, she didn't look smug, she didn't say a word, she simply watched. Harper's voice broke again. "You saved my family, my education, my clothes, my reputation. Everything I had was because of you, and I threw it away. I see that now." "Do you?" Elijah asked at last, his tone unreadable. Harper blinked, surprised he'd spoken at all. She faltered. "I see what I lost." Elijah stood slowly and stepped down from the courtyard platform, the loose gravel crunching beneath his loafers. When he reached the gate, he looked not at Harper, but at her father. "Mr. Ellison," he said, voice cool, "what exactly do you want?" The man tried to smile, as though business could still be salvaged. "There's been a misunderstanding, surely. Harper has always been impulsive, but she's young. The engagement is broken," Elijah said firmly. "And the support our families have shared is gone. There will be no more contracts, no endorsements, no funding." Harper's father paled. "George, Elijah's gaze sharpened. "It's Mr. Wexler, and I told you not to come here again." The older man's throat bobbed. Harper whispered, "Please, just let me stay by your side, even if you don't love me. I'll be quiet, I'll do anything, please, don't throw me away." Elijah stared at her a long time, then slowly turned, not toward her, but toward Anna. "Look up," he said softly. Anna's head lifted, her eyes met his. He stepped closer, reached out, and gently brushed a finger against her cheek. Her breath hitched, color bloomed across her face like spring. "If you want to praise me," she whispered, barely audible, "could you always do it this way?" Elijah held her gaze. "You like that?" She nodded, shy and sincere. "I really do." And that's when Harper finally understood. There was no replacement. There was just the person who was always meant to be there. Elijah didn't look at the Ellisons again. "If you ever show up at my gate uninvited again," he said without raising his voice, "I'll have the entire family blacklisted." The message was received, the Ellisons were ushered off the property, shame heavy on their shoulders, Harper sobbing into her hands. When it was quiet again, Elijah sat back down beside Anna. A few minutes later, a nurse from the estate clinic arrived, apologetic, excited. "Mr. Wexler, your test results are in." Anna turned to him, a flicker of anxiety crossing her face. He opened the envelope slowly, his fingers almost trembling. His parents arrived just as he read the first line. His mother's voice cracked. "What does it say?" Elijah blinked. "My condition." His mother stepped forward. "It's stabilized," he said softly. "Improved, actually." There was silence. Then his mother let out a sound, half sob, half prayer, and collapsed into his father's arms. His father, the man who had only ever teared up once before in Elijah's memory, turned his back to hide his face. Elijah swallowed hard. "Does this mean I can stay with you both longer?" They didn't answer. They couldn't. They only clung to each other, as if their son had come back from the dead. Anna remained beside him, her hands folded, her eyes glistening. He looked at her again, quiet. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. She only reached into her canvas bag and pulled out something worn. A notebook. He recognized it, the one filled with notes about him. She flipped it open to the first page. The date was from the day she arrived. There was a tiny doodle at the bottom, a boy with wings, smiling. Under it, "Today, the little angel smiled at me. It feels like spring arrived early." And Elijah, for once, had no words, only warmth blooming slowly in his chest. The wind was soft that morning, gentle enough to ruffle the edge of Elijah's sweater but not cold enough to bite. Autumn hadn't quite arrived, but summer was fading at the edges. The air smelled like grass and sun-warmed leaves. He sat beneath the oldest tree on the estate, in the hidden courtyard few people remembered existed. Anna had found it, of course, she always did. And today, like so many quiet afternoons, she sat a few feet away, drawing with oil pastels on thick sketch paper. Her knees were tucked to her chest, shoes kicked off, the soles of her socks faintly green from grass. She wasn't watching him. But he was watching her. Her fingers moved delicately, stroking color into the sky of the scene she was building. He caught sight of yellow, orange, soft blue, the hint of a kite string tracing across the horizon. A memory pulled gently at him, like the string of that kite. He'd had another dream last night, or maybe not a dream, maybe a forgotten moment, long buried under years of medication and memory loss. It was the hospital. He had been 15, recovering from one of many cardiac episodes, slumped by the window of the pediatric wing. He'd been told to rest, but his mind had been spinning that day. The beeping machines, the sound of parents crying behind curtains, the way his chest wouldn't stop aching. And then, a paper airplane. He remembered it fluttering past the window like a message from a different world. Curious, he'd opened the window and reached out to catch it before it hit the ground. The handwriting was childish, the pencil faded, but he never forgot the words. "Want to get better? Eat a watermelon lollipop." He had smiled, for the first time in weeks. That day, he told the butler to distribute lollipops to every child who could have them, watermelon, grape, orange. And the next morning, he found a new paper airplane. More wishes, simple things. I want to draw. I want to eat ice cream. I want to see fireworks. He'd never replied, not really, but he had granted them, quietly, through donations, supplies, games, even a rooftop telescope for the hospital wing. Later, more planes came, the handwriting changed, grew neater, shorter, but more personal. "Get well soon. I hope you live a long life. I pray for you every day." And finally, one he remembered most clearly. "I wish I could thank you, but I'll just keep praying instead." He never saw who wrote them. The window was always closed when he arrived, but once, just once, he remembered seeing a shadow at the garden gate of the children's wing. A girl with a braid, a too big uniform, a notebook clutched to her chest. And now, sitting beside him with pastels smudging her fingertips, was Anna Clare. He cleared his throat softly. "Anna." She looked up. At the hospital." He hesitated. "Those paper airplanes, were they really from your sister?" She froze. Then slowly, she shook her head. "No." He turned his gaze to her fully. "So it was you." "I didn't think you'd remember," she said, setting her pastel stick down carefully. He stared at her. "I remember everything." Anna gave him a small, embarrassed smile. "I didn't know how else to reach you. You looked so lonely, so pale. I was just a kid, but you felt like something magical, like a guardian angel who answered wishes." He let out a short breath. "I was just a boy with a hospital wristband." "Maybe," she said softly. "But to me, you were the one who made a world that was hard. Feel a little softer." They sat in silence for a long time. The sketchbook lay beside her, open. The page she was working on showed a hilltop under twilight skies. A boy with dark hair held a kite string. The girl beside him looked up, her hands open to the wind. Elijah reached for her old notebook, the one filled with observations about his breakfast habits and medication times. He flipped to the first page again. "George, may you live a long life." A tiny doodle of a boy with wings sat smiling beside the line. His thumb brushed over the date. It was the same day she had first arrived at the Wexler estate. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. Anna hugged her knees. Because I didn't want you to think I came for attention, or that I expected something in return. I didn't. I really didn't. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for the kite lying on the bench. It was simple, homemade from bamboo and hand-tied string. The tail was made of red cloth, probably torn from one of her old sundresses. He held it out to her. "Let's fly it," he said. She blinked, surprised. "Now?" "There's wind." She stood and took the string from him gently. "Then I'll make sure it soars." They crossed the courtyard together, walking out toward the lawn where the wind gathered in soft whirls. Anna held the kite against her chest as Elijah stepped behind her. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. She ran a few steps, the kite lifted, and then soared. It climbed higher and higher, the cloth tail dancing like a ribbon in the sky. They watched it for a while in silence. Eventually, Elijah spoke again. His voice low, thoughtful. "Do you believe in destiny patterns?" Anna looked at him, the kite string in her hands, the notebook beside him, the wind, the pastels, the paper airplanes that once flew between them before they ever met. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe." He turned to her, the sunlight catching in his eye. "Maybe we do share something like that." Anna tilted her head. "You think fate brought me to you?" He reached out slowly, brushing a piece of hair from her face. And then, after a beat, he said softly, "Maybe we wrote it ourselves."